Alright, we're back down in the shop today. A few days ago, was digging with the excavator and noticed a leak coming out of the front cylinder. Looks like it needs to be repacked. There's quite a bit coming out of the wiper. And it looks like the wiper's it's old, and the wiper's kind of cracked, so I'm assuming the seals are bad. I've already kind of checked what I can visibly see on the rod. Everything looks good. So let's tear into this cylinder here on the old John Deere, see if we can't get it repacked. So this is where the oil's coming from. It's coming from this wiper, and I can see actually a piece of the back side here, the wiper's missing. So this just needs to be repacked. This cylinder doesn't look too boogered up. I'm going to go over the right tools to do this with, which I think I have all of them, to make it a lot easier. On the last video we did with the John Deere, we replaced this bolt, so it'll be a lot easier to get this pin out. I'm probably going to leave this connected up here just for ease of use of getting this out. If you leave the cylinder connected, it's a lot easier to pull out. This isn't a huge cylinder, or at least not by what I'm normally working on. So this should be pretty manageable to get this rod out. We'll have a little bit of a mess to clean up. We'll put some oil drying, some oil mats down to catch some of the hydraulic fluid in the bucket. And I'm going to get started on it here. Okay, so what I did on the cylinder, you really can't get to these lower fittings on the cylinder body, but the flexible hoses that go up have a break point right at the boom knuckle, and what I did is I disconnected those hoses, put caps on them, and that should let any flow come out. It kind of worked out nice because I got flexible hoses. I can just kick those over in the bucket. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but there's just a little bit of hydraulic fluid that came out while I was putting the caps back on. But on this unit, if I needed to, I could actually crank it up and run the boom, etc. Because those are capped off, which may come in handy here in a little bit. There, we got the pin out. This is the same one we looked at before. It's a little wore, and we knew that going into it. I'm going to put my spacers on the side that they go on. And the way I do this, I do them in stacks. So I've got an outer stack, I'll stack them all in one stack, inner stack further in. Same goes for this side. So now we have our cylinder end exposed here. More importantly, this is still being held, so when I actually go to start wrenching on this gland, I'll be able to not have to put that in a vise, which I have a vise. It's just, why do the extra work if you don't have to? We still may end up taking that off for some reason, but this is just the easiest way I found to do it. So this is what I normally take these off with, and usually you need some kind of cheater bar. You want to try to avoid coming in with like a punch or something and smacking on that unless you have to, because it usually boogers these up. This is the right tool. We're going to try this first and see if we can get this gland loose. And usually, like I say, you usually have to have some kind of cheater. And of course, this one's not even thinking about moving. kind of see it's extending itself out. It's coming out the hose, and most of it's going in the oil drain. So we're just going to unscrew this gland. There's going to be a little bit more mess to be made. That's what we've got. So you can see the gland here moves up and down. Try to get a close-up shot, but you can see part of that wiper is actually missing, and we need to get that replaced. Okay, so this one has a locking screw. It's actually on the nut that we're going to remove. Just wanted to show you. Here's one of the broke spanners. As you can see, that just chipped right off. This particular one, it's a 3mm. We've got that out now. Set that somewhere safe here. And this is what Plan B looks like. Should make it a little bit easier. There we go. So that definitely sped the process up. I think I'm lucky that I got to this when I did. This one's completely gone, but it doesn't look like anything has actually contacted the board, and the board looks okay. Shining a flashlight down it, but you can kind of see there, here and here, that's completely wore out. So it was definitely time for replacement. Now I'm going to set this carefully here, and we're going to pull this gland off. You definitely want to have that rod sitting on something. This particular rod has a really nice taper. Should make assembly a lot easier. We're just going to pull this out and take a look at it. Yeah, that's pretty much toast. I don't know how well it's going to come out on camera, but you can see that gland's seen better days. But let's get this all this pulled out, and check our fitment to make sure our kit works. And we should be able to get this thing back together. We're not going to put this gland nut nearly as tight on there as whoever had it before me. And on these seal kits, hopefully this one fits. But I've had really good luck. Not necessarily going directly back to the manufacturer. Those are fairly expensive. And on this particular one, it had really long lead times. And they had all this in stock. So everything looks to be correct. But this is an aftermarket seal kit, as you can see, that comes with all the seals. I'll know for sure when I get these pulled out where they match up. But this looks correct. Okay, so I know that it doesn't come with the 2 outer wear rings that were bad. It does come with the other pieces. We're going to try to get that on, and I'll order the correct rings for the outside. And wait for those to come in, but we should be able to rebuild the gland. And actually I may be able to put everything back on the cylinder itself. Because usually these are split. I'll look and see. Actually, this one may not be. Yeah, these are split. So I can stick that back on after I complete the assembly. Alright, so I went over this a little bit with some Scotch-Brite. Kind of clean up any sealing surfaces. I'm going to spray this off one last time and we can start assembling everything. Okay, now I'm just going to match up O-rings. We'll get all this snap back on the way they came off. Usually on bigger cylinders, I'll actually put a little bit of grease on these. These small cylinders, none of these are really tight, so they're pretty easy to get on. So that's the outer part of the gland has been rebuilt. Now we need to look at rebuilding the internals. You basically have two sets. So this wiper, this would go. You always want your seal cups facing in towards the hydraulic fluid. So that's going to go there. And this is going to go in the rear. You will need a folding tool, especially on this one. It's pretty tight. Just kind of let it roll off into the groove. And once you get the tool out, you can reach through the bottom side. Kind of just work its way up into the sealing surface. And that's what it should look like. Okay, so I just used the old rod wiper to kind of edge this down, and basically you want to look at it, make sure that it's flush, and you don't want to bang around much on this rod wiper if you can help it. So that's why I use the old one, just to kind of go around and get it seated fully. Okay, so as you can see, there's an O-ring underneath this main seal. We're going to go ahead and replace that. This is pretty difficult to do, and you'll want to definitely do some lubrication. And pick the side that's the easiest to get it capped on. Like this side is not, well, it's going to be about as easy either way. It's actually less distance to go if you go in from the nut side, because you should be able to clear the nut and go around it. So this is that inner seal, or inner O-ring. So it pushes back on the seal. This takes a little time to get it off. You just want to walk the new one down. Same kind of principle. And there's the O-ring inside. So after a dead battery, a trip to Lowe's, and a trip to John Deere, we got the wear rings. One of the things on this cylinder that was missing, there was actually an O-ring that went on the back side of that nut. Be sure that you get that. I looked it up on the John Deere parts site and realized that there's an O-ring on that. Got that added, and just so happened the John Deere dealer here close to me actually had the correct wear rings, and I was able to get those. So this should be ready to go. Basically all I did is I put a little bit of grease on the seals, slid the gland on the correct direction, put the bolt on, put our set screw back in, and now we're finishing assembly. We got some hydraulic hoses to hook up. And this is a slow, tedious process, especially because they've used a pipe wrench to take this off before. There's a bunch of sharp edges. Normally I would like to stick something like that in the lathe, but you really can't mill off any of this because you need it to be a little bit bigger than the cylinder to get it back off again. So I'm just kind of screwing it on by hand here until we get it close, and then we're going to tighten it back up. We're not going to tighten it nearly as tight as what it was when we took it off. We got to resort to the method we really don't want to use, but in this case it shouldn't be a big deal because we're not going to really bite these teeth in very deep. Okay, now it's seated, and we're just going to turn just a little bit past seated. And that's it. We don't really want it any tighter than that. We won't be able to get it back off if we ever have to do any work on it. And we're going to push the rod back up and get all the pins lined up and slide it back together. One thing I'll mention, be sure you pay attention to which way you want your grease. You can get this turned around really easily if you're not paying attention. Now we're relatively safe on our rod. The way we took it apart is this spacer combination. So we're going to get this really close here. And we're going to work that cylinder up. It's really easy to move. It should be really easy to line up, because we haven't hooked the hydraulic lines up yet. Now, so the cylinder was at its stroke. I had to pick up on the boom just a bit. Spacer slid back in here. Let's try this again. Yeah. Okay, now we're in. We'll just line up and put our bolt back in. Tighten up some hydraulic lines. Okay, I'm going to connect this up. We're going to pull this out and wash it just to get all the hydraulic fluid off of the fluid. Okay, things are definitely not squirting out of the boom anymore, which is good. Now I'm just going to inspect this, take a look at it real quick. Make sure we look okay and dry, yeah. So this is completely dry now. No fluids squirting out. I'm going to call this a successful repair. So if you ever need to replace hydraulic packing, it's definitely a do-it-yourself kind of thing. Definitely if you own equipment, it's a lot easier to do yourself than trying to disassemble everything and take it somewhere, especially if you're working with a smaller unit. Because really the only specialty tools you got to have is a fairly big socket set and some seal tools, which you can pick up on Amazon for less than $100. You can get a big socket wrench set at Harbor Freight. You're only going to use it a couple of times. That's all. It doesn't have to be a professional tool set, and it'll enable you to repack cylinders, especially if you bought an older machine with a lot of cylinders that need to be repacked. It can be fairly expensive to actually take all the cylinders off, which is a lot of work, and take it to a shop. Anyway, this went good, and pretty happy to actually have this done. It was kind of hindering me. I haven't been able to mow the banks because this was leaking really bad when you had a really high load on it, which that mower did. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.